podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body, which is advancing coaching in business, society, and worldwide. I'm your host, Maisie Barlow, and in this new series, I'm delighted to introduce you to experts, coaches, thought leaders, and individuals who share their passion for working with young people. Our aim is to inspire and challenge the preconceived ideas we may hold, while dissecting and examining our intrinsic ability to show up for the generations of our future. Raw life experiences shape this series, getting to the heart of why working with young people truly matters. So hello everybody and welcome back. Today I talk to the passionate and creative Paul Chambers, where we talk about what it means to be a coach or not, and his approach to facilitating expression with young people. Paul is the co-founder of a inspiring and just astronomically amazing mental health charity called PoetsIN. Paul, welcome.
Hello, Maisie. Thank you so much for having me and welcoming me on board. It's a privilege to be here.
No, it's lovely to speak to you in this sort of format because I know you from elsewhere, don't I?
We do indeed, yes.
And actually, I think this is an overdue conversation because, well, when we get together, we do have these really interesting chats. And I think you've got a huge amount of value to add to this topic on sort of youth coaching or future generations.
Thank you very much.
So to kick things off, it'd be really interesting for our listeners to have a little lowdown on your journey thus far.
Absolutely. It's a long and winding one, as I think is often the case for people within the industry. But I have had a history of, I suppose, neurodiversity. Since I was a child, from the age of 5, I had various things happen. Trauma comes in many forms, and mine came in a low-key one of my parents splitting up. I developed a stutter, and then it kind of led into a variety of other things that no one really picked up on. I always used writing as a means to kind of express myself, also to learn my way out of my stutter. And then around about 13 years old, because I still hadn't had any support of any kind or no one had picked up on what it is that was going on with me, I discovered alcohol. And it turns out I self-medicated with alcohol and then drugs and alcohol for the best part of 30 years. And it wasn't until I came out the other side of that, completely broke apart, I began, so this would be 10 years ago now, properly, I started my mental health journey and have since been learning about myself, having diagnoses, understanding what it is that makes me tick, why I did what I did, forgiving myself for what I did, learning about, how I can manage that and mitigate that and how I can use that to help other people, which is kind of where the charity came into effect 7 years ago. We kind of started about 8 years ago, but the charity formed 7 years ago, and we've been helping adults, children, young people ever since. Amazing.
It really struck me about, obviously for our listeners, it doesn't sound like you've got a stutter anymore. So the fact that you started life, can you tell me a little bit more about that? So you said you used writing.
Yes.
Were you then speaking what you were writing? How did that manifest?
First of all, one therapy I was offered, which was speech therapy. For some reason, so I'd been 6 or 7 by this time, for some reason I didn't want it and chose, whether consciously or subconsciously, to initially read older books like Tolkien, then James Herbert, horror books. And initially it was learning alternative words to navigate. Anyone listening will know when you've got a stutter, it's like you literally have a blockage in your throat and it lands on certain letters or clusters of letters. And so to have alternative words and become quite wordy for a child to navigate your way around those, to avoid that cripplingly embarrassing stutter for someone that age, because obviously children, this would have been in the 70s, you get called all sorts of names. And that love of words from reading just fed into a love of writing. So I was writing extremely adult and dark fiction at a very early age, to the point that teachers were like, "Are you okay, Paul?" Well, they didn't because it was the 70s, but this is very adult, Paul, and quite dark poetry. And so it was from the reading that then fed into the writing, and then the two just went hand in hand. And it's been at times unknowingly my healthy outlet, and now very much my healthy outlet.
Yeah. And it's amazing what you said about kind of learning different words, or I had in mind a sort of like a rock climbing frame where you've got like specific things to hook onto, and you're really, through learning more language and through learning more words, there's the ability to have more places to hang on to.
Wow.
And to pivot through different bits of understanding and expression. So being able to really express yourself.
That's a perfect analogy or metaphor. I never know which one. It's a perfect description, pictorial description of what it is I was doing. Absolutely. Because of course, initially I'd be quite nervous navigating my way through those folds and handholds, but the confidence would come from that. But my stutter does come back every now and again. Normally when I'm talking about my stutter, or if I get very excitable or nervous. I don't get nervous about many things now, particularly with public speaking, but it used to be when it would come out.
Of course.
But it's just a confidence thing.
And that's amazing. So sort of fast forward to the second part of your journey. So you said that you then found the sort of less healthy coping mechanisms. And what was it that changed things and sort of ignited the idea that actually I don't want to be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing this, or I need to be doing something else?
There were multiple things that happened, really. I moved out of the town I didn't want to move out of after a relationship ended, and I had to sell a house I didn't want to sell in a town that was very much my party town. And, it turns out it was better to leave there and move into the country. But at the time, it was such a cultural shock to me. That combined with I lost a cousin unexpectedly. He died from a heart attack from a disorder he didn't know he had. And, one of the closest cousins, a lot of bad business decisions. And I think cleaning up, because my new girlfriend was very much not one to go to the pub and to kind of dabble in things. So this culmination of all of these things and like the cleaning up process whilst dealing with a lot of things. It was all too much. My first therapist, she described it as I was like a little rowing boat in the middle of a stormy sea that was untethered, and just wave after wave was crashing into me from every side, and I just didn't have time to kind of gather any purchase, if you like. And so those were the catalysts that led to me cleaning up and beginning to understand myself and beginning to write my own instruction manual for life.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, because we all need one, don't we? We all need to.
We really do. We really do. No one gives it to us.
No, it can only be written by us and for us.
Absolutely, because we're so completely unique. We're so each of us, despite how much we try to fit in, we're so absolutely unique. And so, as we know in counselling, as we know in therapy, as we know in tools that help us and ways to manage what it is that's going on with us, one thing that works for one person could be the worst thing for the other. So we can only write our own one and learn about ourselves. That's one of the messages I always try to get across to kids. Just like, learn your truth, understand it, like lean into it. Don't be afraid of it, but then find what it is that works for you and what doesn't, more importantly at times.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose that kind of caveats really beautifully into a really interesting thing that we've almost touched on before, but out of this context. So it's this idea of coaching and sort of what is coaching. So obviously this podcast is for the wonderful organisation of the Association for Coaching. And I think it's a really interesting one when we look at coaching through the lens of, how do we help other people? Because what you were saying there about kind of showing up and allowing somebody's authenticity, somebody's truth to shine through is so powerful. And so I know that you don't necessarily call it coaching. It's not something that you label yourself as, I suppose. But I think in a lot of what you do, you're coaching people and you're giving voice to people that don't have it. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Absolutely, yeah. Because when we initially spoke about coming on here, the standard imposter syndrome was clanging. It's like, can I go along and talk on this to coaches? But, coaching, it's a verb and it is what I'm doing. And what we are doing within the organisation, whether be that with a group of people, be that singularly, be that with an adult or young person or child, we are guiding people through what it is that they're going through and giving them ways to kind of navigate that in the future, which is absolutely coaching, isn't it? To the best of your abilities and allowing them to understand their best abilities and their idiosyncrasies and foibles and how to work with them.
Yeah.
I love idiosyncrasies and foibles.
Here we go. There's some beautiful rocks that you've been able to, or handholds that you've learnt for yourself. They're gorgeous words.
Yeah,
Gorgeous.
they are.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And so in terms of what you do, so you work with adults, you also work with young people. And,
yes,
this series is all about working with young people. So I'd be interested to hear how not just the work that you do helps young people, but also how kind of creative exploration, because that's a key part of what you do for PoetsIN. So maybe give a rundown of what you might do for people, or for young people specifically.
Absolutely. We have multiple layers of support or coaching or therapy, or however you want to describe it, in varying degrees of length and depth, I suppose. But anything from our full programs, like a 10-week program for up to 8/10 people that we can do in person or online. And it is, despite the name, poetry can be written. We love it when people do write poetry, but it can be a barrier to people wanting to join us. And so I have to kind of stress that really it's holding space for them and giving the tools that tends to use a paper and pen or pencil or words in a spoken format to get things out of their heart, out of their head, and what it is that you do with them then. And that can create something beautiful. It could be something that you destroy, and the ceremony of destroying it can be, part of that therapy, part of that catharsis. It's teaching tools for life. Some are industry recognised ones, like Worry Diary, where you recognise the things you can and can't do something about, but don't have the logic when you're in the vortex of anxiety to be able to actually differentiate. It could be as simple as sitting there with your thoughts, no matter how dark or intrusive or illegal or haphazard or random, and write them down exactly as they come through your head and give you permission to do that, but tear it up at the end so you don't have that fear of judgment or fear of anyone seeing it. It could be creating a happiness bubble through tapping into the things that make you happy and creating like the perfect day around that, whether that's theoretical or it's a memory or a hybrid of. So there's all these different outlets, and there's we've got 10 modules of 90 minutes max. So there's a lot there. But because of the modality of it, it can be broken down into individual ones. That can be for a group of people, but we also do, I mentor some children, ones that, are having trouble in school or even trouble getting into school. We bring those elements into it, hold space for them. We give them a voice. We give them an ear. We give them support, and we don't judge. And, sometimes it is just talking. We have to recognise the needs of individuals and individual groups. And this is something we learned. We actually started in a prison. And it's something Sammy and I learnt very early doors, that the needs of the people would sometimes negate our plans for what we wanted to do to make it absolutely perfect. And understanding that actually the perfect version only exists if everyone gets what they need out of it. And so it could be writing, it could be talking, it could be all going on a whiteboard, it could be a debate, but just holding space and allowing those outlets and freedom, unless they're a danger to themselves or to someone else, it's completely confidential what they say, which is something kids absolutely love, adore, that they can be themselves as they would be without an adult there, and at times swear if they want to, which I'm a huge advocate for.
So, yeah, I mean, what struck me there was the fact that you were talking about not just holding space, because I think that's a word that's used an awful lot, and it's kind of, what does it mean? But actually, the fact that you've said you're not just an ear, but you give them a voice, and that voice can take whatever shape or form or...
Absolutely.
It can be sweary, it can be aggressive, it can be nasty, it can be happy, it can be joyous.
Yes.
And I think getting out what's going on inside, because I think, it's a real challenge for our young people, because of the fact that, they're kind of not encouraged to, or maybe they are encouraged with social media and things to share what's on their mind, but it's only part of the story, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So actually all of it, all of this richness, all of this feeling has to go somewhere.
It does, yes. And it's either out or inwards, and we want it out.
Yeah, safely.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. In a contained environment. And, when I need to kind of backtrack to me saying they're allowed to swear within those four walls, and then they go back to the rules of the outside world outside of those. For example, one of the things we do is a rap workshop. You can't censor rap. And I recognise the fact that when I began self-harming and then alcohol and drugs, it was because I felt I didn't have a voice. I didn't have the outlets. I was living in Germany. I was in a children should be seen and not heard environment. So everything I do is to battle against that and gain that trust, get them on board and feel safe to actually talk and not carry this around with them.
It's amazing what you said about the kind of four walls. So the fact that actually when they're in a workshop with you, that is a space where they can bring it all. And I want to say it's sad that they then have to go out to the outside world. But, we've got to respect the fact that we live in a society that does have rules. It does have things that we have to follow, things that we have to do, things that we, as a creative person, I sometimes wish that the rules didn't exist. But I think, there's a place for them as well. So it's interesting, really, really interesting.
Many of them are there to protect people. I battle with many people my age. Aren't as maybe open-minded about political correctness and things like that. These things are in place for a reason. They're to protect people that haven't had the protections, all ages, all genders, all sexualities, all colours, all races. They are there for a reason. But outside of those parameters within which we should live, we could really do with a lot less, particularly when it comes to creativity.
Yeah, it sort of doesn't fit together, does it? Creativity and structure. No. There's a kind of mishmashing there.
It sounds like my every working day. Admin? No.
But I do think that, as you say, there are reasons that they are in place. And I think this idea of containment almost, I was only just reflecting on it recently during my training, and we were talking about the fact that, sometimes things like contracts exist to hold a container or a relationship, and it's there for safety. And we're going into a metaphor again, but I likened it to an injured bird in a cage. And It's being looked after within that cage because it's injured. And sometimes for that rehabilitation to take place, it needs to have the containment of a cage, which a cage is negative. It's, why are you putting me in?
Yes.
But actually, sometimes it's safety as well.
That's fantastic. You reflected well.
Thank you.
I'm going to use that.
You can use it. Take it. It's for everyone.
Fantastic.
Makes me think about something that we've spoken about before. So I know with a lot of your workshops, the people that are coming do struggle with rules and boundaries, and they've been put into a cage. So they might be in the school system, especially young people. They've put into a school system. They don't quite feel like they fit. They're thrashing about and don't know that they want to stay there. So actually something that I think you do really beautifully that you've told me about is leaving the door open or slightly ajar. So the safety or the place to express is here, but actually I'm giving you your autonomy back to say whether you want it or not.
And the agency, here's some agency. Yeah. I'm treating you like an equal. If you want to gain their trust, you cannot talk down to them. So to give them agency, obviously we prefer them to stay, but the nature of the people we're often working with, that would be counterproductive to force them to do so. So to give that agency, if on the rare occasion, say their anxiety is too high that they need to leave the room, with the choice of coming back or not, to do that and to give them the power is the way to bring them back. Because fostering that feeling of safety and that feeling supported and having a voice and having an ear, to then force them to remain in that cage. It's quite rare it happens, to be fair. It's rare that people leave with children, but if they do, then we look, for example, if they were in a group and they needed to leave a group, and we've had it in the past where someone was the picture of anxiety, literally kind of rocking backwards and forwards, and they left, but, without any judgment. And over the course of the 6 weeks, they did gradually come back, and by the end of it you wouldn't have believed it was the same person when we all went out for coffee afterwards, and they were interacting with everyone. But if that group environment had been deemed incorrect, we have the other alternatives. So we could move to a one-to-one, we could move to mentoring, we could move to online support. If they don't like the eye contact, we can do it via Slack or WhatsApp. So it's an open door sort of thing that we do, but we have an open door to multiple rooms.
I'm hearing flexibility. There's a flexibility there that is, we can bend to meet you where you need to be met.
Absolutely, yes.
As I say, young people often need that. They need the choice. Yeah. Because they're constantly told that this is what you have to do. You're not an adult yet.
Absolutely. And therefore you have no say in anything. I mean, like, that's going to not be counterproductive. There's always the ones that step in line of flourish within that environment. But there's a lot of people, increasingly so in the last few years, a lot of young people that are struggling with fitting in, with social anxiety, with anxiety in general, and the construct of the atypical kind of classroom environment. And I feel sorry for schools because, they're trying to provide to 1,000 kids in one building per day. So obviously it's difficult for them to tailor things down. But that's where people like us come in. Bring us in, and we are the tailored approach to those ones that you're trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole. And we have multiple shapes for those pegs. My God, what are we talking about here? What are you talking about here, Paul?
You're summing it up beautifully. And I think, like you say, you are almost what needs to happen in schools. So organisations like yourselves, they're the approach that's missing in schools. It's an interesting one because I suppose schools and the education system on the whole is not going to change overnight. It's not going to be burnt to the floor. It's not going to change in a drastic way overnight because it's such a large institution, I suppose.
Yes. It's a machine, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I suppose machine. If school's the machine, then, in fact, I'm going to pose you that question. If school's the machine, then what are you?
Oh, if schools are a machine, then I'm a modification. I'm thinking of the schools a giant car, and I'm those modifications that kids put on. So I can make it go faster or louder. I can make it ride smoother. I can help them navigate the journeys with more ease. There's something you can add to fuel, isn't there, that makes your money go farther.
That's amazing. I love that because, I mean, as we say, I think there's so many beautiful organisations that do exist, and they
Indeed.
come in and they complement what exists. So,
oh yes, yeah. There's so many. I don't believe there's such a thing as having too many outlets, particularly within that environment where you've got so many unique individuals. We do sometimes have this with schools that have a mindset like, well, we do this and we do that. Some well-known organisations being in there because that's their go-to. But, have more. Have as many, particularly often what we're offering is already funded. So it's free to them. It's a no-brainer. We've got the group that haven't responded to all these other things, and so often the case we are the ones that are almost brought in because nothing else has worked. Why not jump to the start of that process and just bring the alternative people in early doors and recognise that expression, that outlet, that creativity, that something different is the different thing that is going to work. Yeah,
it's a fascinating subject, isn't it? Because I suppose it's like banging your head against a brick wall sometimes when people can't see it. And this is why we're having these conversations, is
Indeed,
to spread to the wider community out there that maybe are interested in working with young people but haven't made the leap. Maybe they're working within organisations that do work with young people. So I'm really keen to hear what your advice would be to people that are kind of on the fence. They're interested in working with young people. Maybe they're a coach and they don't know how to get into that.
That is an interesting one because it's something I never thought I'd be doing, ever thought I'd be doing.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even used to like children. I've got to be honest here. I haven't had children myself. And so therefore it wasn't something I ever thought I wanted to do. But I think on a subconscious level, I was possibly avoiding my inner child and unresolved issues. But to work with children, and apologies if any of this is kind of teaching anyone to suck eggs, but above all else, you have to be your 100% true self. And I think I know if you're not, they will know. They will know. Be completely honest and transparent about yourself, even if you're still learning about yourself, but you'll be 100% transparent and honest about that. Because to get them to share with you, you absolutely have to share with them, and you need to do it on a level, and they will share if you do. Don't ever talk down to them. I think everyone knows that. But, they're used to teachers admonishing them, punishing them, holding them to account. They need an adult that doesn't sit in the same mould as a teacher. And this, again, I admire teachers and what they do. This isn't in any way, shape or form me saying they're doing a poor job, but we're talking about people that need an alternative. never belittle their woes. Just because they're not paying a mortgage or keeping a car on the road, it doesn't mean that them worrying that little Tommy doesn't like them or that they haven't got likes on their social media post. It means a lot to them. It means as much to them as our ridiculous woes mean to us. And we've already covered it, but giving them the freedom within reason to be the people they are when you're not in the room. Because unless you do that, you're never going to fully get out of them what you need to work on it. By giving them agency and choices within, even if, so, we use music. When we're writing, I'll put some quiet music on, unless we're doing a stress bust and I put heavy metal on. But wherever possible, if it's relevant, I allow them to choose the music. I allow them, how are you feeling today? What I want to do this today, but, if you go around the room and everyone's feeling angry, we'll do another stress bust just to clear the air and, giving them some choice so that they feel like they're in that machine with you, going back to that. You're in the same vehicle and you're not just pushing them on a trolley that's about to go down a hill into a chasm.
Yes. Which can be quite scary, yeah.
It really can. It really can. But I've noticed the more honest I am and candid, within reason, I deliver assemblies to schools all over the place. And the schools so often after, so like, you absolutely had them completely enraptured listening to you. It's because am I allowed to swear on this?
I don't see why
PG
not.
Swearing.
If it doesn't make it, then it doesn't make it. But
okay. I don't bullshit people.
Right.
I hate bullshit, so I'll be up there. And, depending on the age of the audience, so I talk about my past and my drink and my drugs and how that fed into me learning about these healthy coping mechanisms. And that's a part that they need to know about why it is I can stand up there and say these things, because I want them to not do the same things that I did. So to give a polished version of that, they're going to know. I'm as honest as I can be within the constructs of the rules. If I'm talking to sixth formers, it's all in. But if I'm talking to 11-year-olds, they need the PG version.
Of course, yeah.
But at all times, honesty. And I've even, with the group of ADHD children that I've worked with, there was a particularly chaotic one where I left there and my neurodiverse quest for perfection, that doesn't exist. I left there and I felt really low because I felt like we hadn't reached what we needed to within that session. And the following week I came back and I just said, look, last week I left feeling really low. Honestly, I'm here, I want to do things. And they were instantly on board to then give the next best session that we'd had. So talk to them like an equal.
Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful.
It's what they need. Yeah, talk to them like they need that because they don't get it elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. It is. And there's so much that you've just said there that's just making me think about so much. And I think what's really struck me actually is what you said about not planning to work with children or not planning to work with young people. And it's sort of just happening.
Yeah.
So that's...
And I love it. I absolutely love it. It's completely my passion. And this is what I say to them at the start of an assembly or any talk. Be like, I'm this, and I never thought I'd be stood here.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be stood here because I made a million mistakes. I'm an ex-addict. I've done this, and this, and I have ADHD and OCD, so I want this to be perfect, but I can't deliver it, and that's okay. And they're instantly, oh, wait a minute. And what's my point there? Yeah, I never thought I'd be doing it, but it's just... So often since we set up the charity, so much of what we do now has been very much dictated, a bit like our sessions, dictated by the needs of the people that we're working with. I was going to say the masses, that sounded a bit trite, but we've always been flexible. The word you said earlier, we've always we've adapted wherever possible. And I was asked if I could initially do a talk to some kids in a primary school that are going up to a secondary school, which is possibly my most fearful 9-year-olds. I was more scared at that talk, this was a few years ago now, than any I've done. I've spoken in front of 1,000 people now. Yeah. And it was early days and it was children. Scared. And actually I just made it fun and I gave them the chance to be loud and jump up and down and chant something. Because it was kind of linking in with how nerves and excitement are very similar feelings.
Yes, yeah.
And to kind of create a kind of an earworm kind of chant about that and to remember it when they go up. And then I got asked into another kind of fairly local school to try our 6-week program. A friend of mine's a Senko there. And I was and I remember the first couple of sessions, I was arriving shaky. I still had a lot of social anxiety then. Shaky and sweaty and initially quite, this is how we must do it. And again, learned very quickly that doesn't work, and to have that freedom. And however we reach that goal at the end, there are multiple ways to do that, even if you will give them a whiteboard marker and they're doing it on a whiteboard, just activities. So it wasn't planned, it's happened, and it's now my absolute passion, being the person I didn't know I needed when I was their age.
Wow, that is incredibly powerful. I mean, that's it, isn't it? It's, we talk a lot about kind of the reparenting of oneself, the role model, I suppose, that you didn't know you needed. Beautiful. And what is it about because what I'm hearing is that you give permission, we've gone over it already, but you give permission to express. And what do you think is so powerful about expression?
I'll illustrate this before going into it's an outlet, it's an inlet, it helps you purge things, and then when purged, the magic of it is what you do with that. So it could be destroying it. So the catharsism of that, the therapy of that is huge. To burn something or tear it up or whatever that you've written and got up, particularly when you're in a dark place, or creating something equally as dark if you want, or light, to kind of create those feelings through expression. Or something you're working on, like, a long piece of fiction, for example, or journaling. All forms of expression that help you stop from boiling over, or kind of temper those feelings. Or if you're up and you need to come down, it does that. If you're down and you need to go up, it can do that. There's a tangible, palpable cause and effect. If I'm not using my coping mechanisms, particularly my creative ones, my expression, because I join in with the kids within these sessions, so I'm doing it with them at all times to be a leader. So particularly over summer holidays, I can always feel when I'm doing less of that, I can feel myself filling up with my disorders and my illnesses, and I have to find another way to kind of pour that out. But I was going to say about something that really illustrates this perfectly. I'm doing assemblies all next week, and this is one of the best parts of the assembly. I always check the school first, but halfway through, let's say an hour-long assembly, and things are dwindling. No matter how engaging you can be, children sitting there for half an hour, they're beginning to get a bit like, oh, God, I'm hungry, or whatever. So at the stage where I'm talking about having an outlet and expressing yourself for the good of you, I explain that, when I moved to this small village, there's a place I can go that's kind of equidistant from anyone, and can scream in a field if I'm feeling particularly overwhelmed, and like primal scream. And I can see if anyone's coming from about a kilometre either way, so, I don't get hauled away. So I get hundreds of children at a time to stand up and clench their fists and scream. The hairs are going up on my arms even talking about this, because he's so powerful. Completely changes the mood. First of all, they're kind of looking at, are we allowed to do this?
Yeah.
I get teachers to join in as well. Come on. Like, we're all going to do this, and we're just going to clench our fists and scream as loud as we can. The older the kids, the more worried they are of judgment. The younger the kids, the louder it is. And then after that, they're just like, the mood has exploded in there. Everyone's happy. They've just, from that 2 seconds, having an outlet, expressing yourself can make you feel like that. But years later, I bump into these kids and they still remember that assembly. They still remember me. I'm the guy that came along that allowed them to scream in the assembly about the mental health, and it remains like one of the. It's so fun to do. It's so much fun. But yes, so expression and having those outlets. I've probably gone off on a tangent here, but they are key to stopping you carrying these things around.
Yeah, beautiful point. And so, do you think? Because I imagine some of our listeners, as I say, will be kind of working one-to-one with children and young people. So it's making me think about this kind of line between coaching and mentorship, and the fact that actually in a lot of ways, young people kind of, as you say, need that authenticity, need that realness, need you to meet them on their level. So what would you say is, well, maybe there is no line, maybe it is just something that you figure out in the room or the space, but do you think that there's a place for coaches that are working with young people to allow that as well? Maybe they have the confidence to do the screaming.
Yes, I think so. Can you imagine the power in the counsellor and the counsellee? Or the
coach
mentee.
And the coachee,
the
or
coach,
the mentor and the mentee.
And the coachee, both screaming in the middle of a field. I actually, when I do mentoring, depending on the person, sometimes it will be a walk, with all permissions in place. We'll be going for a coffee or in the school or whatever. And that has happened. And I think if there's a way of doing it, kids really respond to it. So when we do our stress buster exercise where we allow them to rant and rage, there was one particular school I was in, and unbeknownst to me, this wasn't encouraged or even suggested, but at our Dead Poets Society, when they were sharing their rants and rages, one by one they stood up on the desks. and
That's wonderful.
Like, I can't film this, but, they respond to it. They love it. So if there's a way of doing it, do it. Just step outside of the shackles, what's perceived to be a coacher thing. Because those shackles are holding us down within these parameters within which we have to work. But if we can work outside of those parameters with doing something a little bit outrageous or a little bit, like off the beaten track, that they're going to respond to because that's what their needs dictate, then surely we should be doing it.
Yeah. Oh, that is so rich. I think, it's that's amazing. It's so rich. My brain's gone into a sort of explosion mode because we need to meet people. We need to meet people there. And I suppose there's something to be said about as I said, confidence that you have as a coach, but it's pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone as well.
Absolutely.
Because as we get older, it is one of those things, we get older, and as, we're moving through life, we get smaller. We want to close ourselves down a little bit. And actually, I suppose this is the encouragement to fight against that, to stay expansive, keep, pushing forward and going outwards.
Yes.
And getting into those bits of slight discomfort. Because I'm sure I don't know, but how did you feel the first time that you did the screaming with a group of people?
Oh, it was, I felt like I'd done, like in the old days when I was doing a lot of drugs, but a far cleaner, far more wholesome version. The high on the back of that. And this is someone that, the creative group in Hitchin many years ago, well, not even many years ago, about 5 years ago. So we were a new charity, and to stand in front of about 10 very lovely, very friendly people, I had to take a diazepam to enable me to do that, to talk about my charity. My social anxiety was such. And the more I've worked through the uncomfortableness of talking in front of people, the easier it becomes. So, I'm in my 50s now and I'm still trying to push those boundaries rather than detract, because I'm finding what I'm actually good at finally is this thing that is sharing in front of people. And the more you do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, the easier it becomes. And it's as simple as that.
Oh, definitely.
And so, yes, pushing for our boundaries, whatever it takes to do that, like whether it's tiny incremental steps of just diving straight into it. Right, we can go and scream in a field today. I don't want to do it, but actually be honest about the fact that I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it with you because I want you to do it with me.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that's it. It's meeting them there and saying, well, actually, I'm feeling a bit self-conscious about this as well.
Yeah, because I'm a human being.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, your rage version of me is still inside, and it's still saying those things in my ear that stopped me from pushing myself. So let's do this.
That is so beautiful.
It really is. And they do recognise that. They do recognise honesty, and they do recognise authenticity in you. So take the journey with them if you can. I know that's a ridiculously glib thing to say, but it does work. And I am very much an overthinker, which is why I suppose I had social anxiety. But actually, once you realise perfection doesn't exist and actually we're trying to achieve this common goal, once you kind of punch through that and the shackles that we put on ourselves as we get older and more boring, we need to be more boring. No, we don't. We don't. Just push your boundaries. Jump out of a plane if you're scared of flying. Which I've done.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
It works. Aversion therapy.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And what it makes me think of is this idea of not sitting opposite your coachee or your mentee or whoever you're working with. It's kind of, it's sitting alongside.
Yes.
It's driving the car together. It's saying, actually, we've got dual controls here.
Yes.
Maybe I can show you a few things because I've done this before. And that's maybe where we place ourselves as adults and, adults working with young people. It's, I've done this before and therefore I can jump in and help you out if you get stuck, but I want you to be the one driving.
Yeah, like driving instructors. I mean,
exactly.
We do it there.
Yeah.
I think you've just solved the whole mystery of it, Maisie. Right, that's it. We're all on a journey of life. We are co-drivers and we're on the same journey. Here's the controls, but I'm here if you need me to, if there's any hazards or there's any unexpected bumps in the road. Wow.
I mean, it's a lovely metaphor. I don't think I can claim that one for myself. I think I might have heard it somewhere else.
No, it's yours now.
Wherever I heard it, I mean, it's definitely stuck with me because I think it's a beautiful analogy. It's a beautiful metaphor to depict it, but it's definitely shone through in what you're saying.
I'm a huge advocate for it.
Yeah, and I really wanted to know about because you do work with adults and young people and, people in prisons. That's, as you say, that's where you started.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know the differences and the sort of similarities. So what crops up that you're like, wow, this is a stark difference, and what crops up that's actually, no, they're just people?
First and foremost, I think both adults and children have an aversion to poetry. So I think one group are in school still and the other haven't done it since school. Wide sweeping statement, I know, but, generally speaking. So once we've got past the fact that you don't have to do poetry, that's definitely aversion to it is definitely all people.
Universal.
Yes.
Unless you're someone like me that thrives on it.
Absolutely. And you understand it's like the beauty and the catharsis it can bring. But also, ironically, both adults and children, particularly the ones that never wanted to do it at the first stage, end up writing poetry without any kind of forcing them to do so. So many of them will end up doing it. Just, I've written a poem. Have you?
Oh, really?
Yeah, that happens with children and adults. Adults arrive with masks on very much more firmly than children.
Interesting, yeah.
They've been wearing them a long time, and those societal expectations have kind of formed them into this often smaller version of themselves, and broken and kind of downtrodden and person that might have made quite a few mistakes. And they're more likely to smile and nod along rather than it can take longer to gain their trust, particularly if they've had, for me, it can do. And, they're more likely to never return without saying anything. Again, it's a rarity, but adults find it harder to communicate about the bad stuff, whereas kids hide nothing. Whether that's boredom or they're in awe of something you're saying, it's all there to see. It's up front. There's very few filters. Obviously, there are filters with things that have gone on with them, the darkness inside at times, but generally, if you've got the group or not, or the individual. Kids need stimuli more, obviously, particularly for working with, there's no such thing as naughty kids, but the ones that might have ADHD, diagnosed or undiagnosed, they need stimuli. They need variety and need to be changed up. It's like keeping a balloon up in the air. Their interest is the balloon, and you're like, okay, what do we need to do? Okay, do we need to kind of do jumping jacks, or like everyone go to the whiteboard, or let's write a rap this week or something? Break here, like a chat there.
More dynamic, I suppose, is what I'm hearing. Like it's got.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
It's alive. I'm sure all the sessions are alive, but
yes, but some need to be more so than others. And also we do find with children, a lot of them, particularly if they're, let's say, the free thought writing thing we do, they'll draw rather than write. They'll doodle rather than write. And that's fine. That's fine, as long as the pen is there with the paper and they're sitting with their thoughts. Adults fall in line easier bizarrely. Obviously, there
Interesting,
are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, they will fall in line. But I think with children and adults, it's very much about how you kind of place what those tools you're teaching them, or why you're doing this thing. So, for example, when we're in the prison, we're at Peterborough Prison, there's women and men's side. The women's side had a waiting list for people to join it. So it just exploded. The men's side, not so much. But once I got across it, actually, you can write, rap and drill while we're sat here. That is effective, because we were more poetry driven then in the initial stages. And once they got hold of that idea, they're far more open-minded to it and actually enjoyed it. So there's a reticence with adults that there might not be with children, other than the fact that they're normally sat in a school and they don't want to be there. But if you can punch through that with that, switching up and variety and honesty and being on that journey with them, kids are easy to work with. Adults can be very challenging. Which is the absolute opposite to what I ever thought it would be.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really fascinating to think about it, because I'm training to work with adults, but what I've held in mind, I suppose, throughout my training is the fact that actually we will always be tapping into an inner child, because the child
100%.
exists.
Yeah.
Within the adult, it's just, as you say, kind of maybe hidden behind quite a thick mask.
Yes.
So it's how do we gently and with permission and with kindness help them to take that mask off, or to just push it to the side slightly, so that they can access these parts of themselves that I'm sure, do still exist.
I'd imagine 99% of the people that listen to this are, how can I put it? I was in a corporate life for a very, very long time, and being outside of that very much feeds into my inability to be serious. I am professional because obviously we have to work within such hugely stringent parameters, so hugely professional, but I'm not a suited and booted person. And I think that's probably why I have fun working with children. With adults, I have to put on a bit of a mask, because it isn't my natural go-to to be never dour, but a bit more serious side to me. So I think there's definitely a difference in managing, working with adults and children. I think we can be our inner child more with the children, and we have to talk to the inner child of the adults when we're working with them.
With children, it's maybe like a breaking down of who they perceive you as. In fact, it's probably in both ways. It's breaking down how they perceive you. And, when you're delivering workshops, when you're being their coach even, you are the professional in the room. You are the power in the room. You are the person in charge. So how people perceive that, how young people perceive that versus how adults perceive that is going to be nuanced and different and interesting. Yeah. Yes.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. And we've got different people within our organisation that have a different voice, one of whom is actually trained in coaching and would also be excellent as a podcast voice, has beautiful tones, very calm, very, very chilled, and is very good at the corporate stuff and the adult stuff, but would possibly be eaten alive in a school.
So it's knowing our strengths then as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you can tap into your inner child and you've recognised that within yourself, then maybe working with young people is for you.
Funnily enough, yes, I think you've nailed that.
Yes. So I feel like just in awe of the conversation that we've had, because we've gone so many different places, and I feel like I've learned a huge amount from this conversation. I wanted to give you the opportunity, just as we wrap things up, to kind of have a little shout or celebrate some things that might be coming forth for you, that either people can get in touch about or keep you on the back burner. I know something was said about a book, potentially.
Yes, there is a book that I've been asked to do. But first of all, I would also say, with the charity, of course, there's always help for people there should they want it. And that can be just online, in person or whatever, just talking to someone. Not that I want to negate anything that you lovely people do, but, it's another level that if people need it. So by all means, reach out, and you can refer yourself if you want some support, even if that's just chatting on WhatsApp. So we help 4,000 people a year, and we haven't turned a single person away in 7 years. So that's number one shout out for myself and Sammy's charity. And you don't have to write poetry.
And how do people contact you?
If you check out PoetsIN.com, there's all the information there on how to refer yourself, either via email or there's an online form. It's very simple. And we aim to have everyone triaged within 48 working hours and then on some sort of support within 2 weeks. So there isn't the normal waiting list. So yes, or just find us on social media and message us there. And then, yes, there's my, oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, because I have published a book before, but it was fiction. And it's something I no longer align with. And I am terrible with non-fiction. And I've got so many non-fiction books, but I think because of my psychological wiring, my eyes just slide off the page of anything non-fiction. So it's rather ironic that an organisation, one of the biggest mental health online hubs that work with schools and the education sector, and adults, but I think primarily schools and the education sector, have asked me to write a lived experience book. And after much consideration, kind of after the last year of the talks that I have done with children, we've landed on the fact that I'm going to, feeding into that write your own instruction manual, I am literally going to write a handbook for how to write your own instruction manual. So you can dip into the book wherever you want. So it could be something on ADHD, it could be something on social anxiety, it could be something on journaling, or it could be something on relationships within your friends, and kind of like where at any time you can kind of drop into it. But it'll also have pages for journaling in, or, there'll be blank pages for you to write in. So it isn't specifically about creativity, but the creativity will be a part of it, because obviously we aren't all creative. A lot of tools and a lot of stories, some which will be funny, some self-deprecating, but not to the point of self-flagellation, because we are all human. And I think a lot of non-fiction books are dry for people like me. So I'm going to try to make it an easier read so that people can actually have a laugh, but also learn these tools that can help them for life.
Amazing. I would disagree. I think everybody is creative in their own way.
Yes. But whether they recognise that or not. And I think there can be that barrier to creativity, because people think, I need to write like Shakespeare. I need to write like Shakespeare. I need to paint like Monet.
Or I can't draw, or I'm no good at art, or I can't...
But actually we can all write, we can all draw, we can all paint. It's just our interpretation and the comparison that we hold ourselves to. That fear of judgment, that quest for perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. It's all our own versions of things.
What an amazing way to end.
That was fun.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure, as I say, the community is going to get a huge amount out of this conversation. Thanks so much, Paul.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a genuine joy. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the Association for Coaching and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. Explore our new digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, signature programs, member benefits, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events to help you develop and increase your coaching expertise.